Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TCLF One-on-One series. Today is a special day. We finally have our most awaited guest, Mary Pryor QC. We have been trying to organize this podcast for about 3 months now, and it's such an honor to finally have ma'am with us. Mary Pryor QC, as the name goes, is a Queen's Counsel in the United Kingdom. She specializes in criminal law and is a part of the 36 group right now. She is one of the top ranked criminal law practitioners in the United Kingdom by almost all leading ranking guides and profiles. And it's our absolute honor to have her as an advisory board member at TCLF as well. She has been instrumental for bringing more and more women into the bar, helping them while they've joined the profession. And ma'am, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Shashwat, it's my pleasure.
Ma'am, just to set the tone for the conversation, can you tell us more about your journey? Because whenever someone researches upon you or your journey in this profession, they come to know that you have had very humble beginnings, and you not only joined the bar, you've risen up to the level of a Queen's Counsel and one of the top ranked practitioners in your area of specialization. How did the journey come about?
That's a really good question, and I suspect the answer is by accident initially, and then by stubbornness as it progressed. So my father was a coal miner, and my mother had a number of factory jobs, and we lived in a very humble house in the middle of the country in the Midlands. And my father, when I was 5, broke his back in an accident in the mine. And after that, he earned less money and then eventually very little. And so I grew up in an area where I was supported by the state with free school meals, a free uniform grant, and also in an environment where we had a number of professionals coming into the house to apparently help us. What it taught me, I think, was a level of resilience, which has been extremely helpful in my career as it progressed. But although I can trace my family back on both sides to coal miners and the daughters of coal miners right up until about 1732, what I can tell you is that they didn't grow up in an environment where there was the possibility of education and progress. So heaven knows what those wonderful people who worked so that I could be born would have achieved had they had the opportunities that I had, with a free education and better quality of life as a result. So the first thing I learned was the benefit of an education. And I watched people around me going into juvenile prison, making poor choices. And all I can tell you in my early days was I was determined that that wasn't going to be me. I wanted to have a quality of life so that I could look after people like my dad. So that if someone came into our home and talked down to my father, I would have the skills to stick up for him. Because when I was little, I didn't. And so I learnt them, and I learnt to be able to speak up for people. I did a degree in law because it seemed a good degree, not because I intended to be a lawyer. People like me were not lawyers. Most of the people I knew had jobs in shops or factories or things like that. My determination at that stage was to have a job where I didn't go to work in the dark and I didn't come home in the dark, because that seemed to be the life of many people around me. I did my degree in law. I did all right in it. My father died in the middle of my second year. He died because obviously he'd been working down the pit since he was 14 and his lungs were very poor. And so I had to retake a year. And then after that, I worked for a year selling cars. I was hopeless at that, dreadful. And then after that, I worked as a magistrate's court clerk for some time. And they sponsored me to go off and do my bar finals course. I ended up becoming a barrister because the solicitor's course was full. No other criteria than that. And I think it was when I got there that I suddenly realized that I was as intelligent as the other people around me. The things I didn't have were the social skills that they had. And I think that's the frightening thing for people who are progressing in life, is that you don't know what you don't know. So for a very small example, one of my friends, a very privileged lady, but tremendously supportive, said to me, "Don't you just hate it when you invite people to help themselves at the dinner table and they have a second helping before everyone's finished their first?" And what I wanted to say was, well, I had no idea that was a rule, and therefore I don't hate it, and I wouldn't have taken it as a personal insult. But there's nowhere you can read that. There's nowhere that you can look that up. So what you can do intellectually is to achieve a great deal just by hard work and determination. And I don't think that there is a difference intellectually, but social skills, they take some getting used to. And so what you have to do is you have to understand that you didn't have that type of upbringing, and it will take you a little while to adjust. And so I got a very thick skin about it. And so when judges spoke to me in Latin, I would say to them, "I'm sorry, I didn't have a private education. I went to state school. Can you speak in English for me?" When people would use words I didn't understand, I'd either look them up or say, "What does that mean?" And I realized, and I think this is a thing to realize when you are progressing in society and in life, that actually people began to assume I knew far more than I did. So sometimes I just had to remind them that I was the daughter of a coal miner and that I needed a little bit of assistance in the skills that go with it. But what I would say is that in this profession, actually once you're in it, you are simply judged on your ability. And it is a warm and welcoming profession. Welcome to all, whatever their start in life, whatever colour, creed, religion, disability or non-disability, sexuality. In the English bar, we don't care. We don't care what you are. What we care about is your ability. And so I have to say that did then happen. And I then joined the Crown Prosecution Service. I had 3 children. So when I had a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old and a baby, I decided it would be a good time to go to the independent bar. Don't ask me why, Shashwat, I just did. And I applied everywhere and I got one chance, one offer at a place called Clock Chambers in Wolverhampton, which is not a blue chip chambers. It's a very small set of chambers. And I took that chance and I was determined to make it succeed, and it did. And eventually I ended up in one of the most prestigious sets in the country, the 36 group. My work is now highly regarded, and I became a QC. But all of that, I think, came from listening to people talking down to my father. That's the beginning of my journey, even if I didn't really know about it at the time.
Right. I think this is truly inspirational because what people tend to forget is that to become a great lawyer, you obviously need that legal acumen and everything, but the most important criteria is that you have some kind of a perseverance, a driving factor, and this is truly inspirational, your story. And this serves as an example that no matter how many difficulties are there, you can still go out and achieve whatever you want if you have the required diligence and perseverance. Talking about that, ma'am, we've seen that around the world, not just in some selected jurisdictions, there has been some, like women in bar is not a very great, women in bar are not that much represented in most of these jurisdictions. What do you think is still the reason behind this, disproportionate representation of women in bar?
Well, I think that the major difficulty arises not at the start. So certainly in England, the number of students studying at a law degree level is about 50-50. So 50% men, 50% women. I think the same applies on the professional training courses. But I think where women stop being at the bar is once they've had children. because it is an extremely difficult process to be always available. And the bar particularly is difficult in that if you are self-employed, you have to find the funds to pay for someone else to look after your children, for example, while you go and earn money, but you may not get that money for a significant time. And also it is exhausting having small children and working in this profession, because it isn't 9 to 5. There are always things that have to be done in the evening and the following morning. And so I think there are obviously sensible reasons why women struggle to carry on in their late 20s and early 30s while they're bringing up very young children. But one of the major problems, I think, has been a lack of support, a lack of understanding that we need women in this profession, and we need them to be able to get over that very difficult period of time where they're having young children. And so chambers as a whole used to be far less helpful when you took maternity leave, and far less understanding as to how you should come back. Judges used, I think, to be far less helpful about making sure that they didn't ask too much of you overnight. And instructing solicitors sometimes were less helpful when they perhaps didn't want to instruct someone who'd come back from maternity leave. I have to say that Women in Criminal Law has worked really hard, together with lots of other women's organisations, to make sure that that's not the case so much now. And the key, I think, for success for women at the bar during those years, so mid-20s to say mid-30s, is support. You need the support of your colleagues, ideally the support of a large and loving family. But people move all over the country now, and I'm sure that's the same everywhere. And what you need more than anything is other people who've gone through that process to mentor you and say, yes, it is tiring, it is exhausting, but like everything else, this will pass.
On that, I'll just give you a brief start from India. The Supreme Court of India has only designated 15 women till now as senior advocates. So obviously the factors such as, the years of practice into play, the required expertise come into the picture, but the issue of underrepresentation will always be there, because there are far more women who deserve that gown and don't get it. So that's always an issue. Now, talking about your area of expertise, ma'am, was it always your plan to venture into criminal law, or was there some specific reason behind choosing this particular field of expertise?
Well, when I started, I did, like most young barristers do, I did everything. So I did chancery, commercial, bit of land law, quite a lot of family work, because that was how it was. And it's not how it is now. Nowadays, everyone specialises, and they specialise really early on.
Right.
There's probably really good reasons for that, but I think it's a mistake, because I think that you need to be able to do a wide variety of work to see what you're comfortable doing, what your practice is going to develop in. For many years, I did both family and crime. So up until about 15 years ago, I did quite a lot of family work. But there is was a philosophy that solicitors like you to specialise, and they don't like you specialising in two things. So at that stage, I chose crime because I like advocacy, and I like jury advocacy, which is a very different type of advocacy than family advocacy. And I don't think, for me, there was anything that could compete with the privilege of being in a criminal trial, having a jury to address and a judge, and having the evidence unfold in front of you without the potential really to be able to rehearse too much what you were going to say. It's live, it's exciting, it's a real responsibility. For me, it was the best job in the world.
Right. And even in the sphere of criminal law, you specialize in dealing with people with vulnerabilities. So can you just tell us more about what sort of people qualify as people with vulnerabilities? What are the difficulties that you as a barrister face when dealing with such people? Because obviously it's a very tough task.
Yes, well, vulnerability includes, first of all, youth. So we question children from about the age of 4 up until 18. So people are vulnerable because they're young. That's the first category. The second category of vulnerability is those who have a mental disorder or a psychological disorder. So autism, people with learning disabilities, people with schizophrenia and other mental health disorders. And there is then a category of people who have communication difficulties, those who can't hear, can't see, find it difficult to speak. There are vulnerabilities also which are caused by a combination of those things. So you can have a 5-year-old autistic little boy who can communicate but requires props in order to do so. So you may need to use all manner of props. But all of these people can take part in the criminal justice system. They can be heard. They can be heard as witnesses, they can be heard as victims, and they can be heard as people who are accused of crime so that they can give evidence on their own behalf. The key to... No, so do go on.
What sort of difficulties arise in dealing with such people as a barrister?
The first thing is that these vulnerable people are going to be far more nervous about the court system than anyone else. They need, first of all, reassurance and the ability to develop a rapport with you, which is easy because you may often meet them for the first time on the day of the hearing. Secondly, you have to make sure that you don't assume that they understand either what you're saying or the process itself. So you have to keep asking them questions to see if they can help you to understand the process. In other words, telling them something and then asking a question which gets the answer. Sometimes the answer they give you shows that you've not explained it well at all. You've also got to make sure that the court is set up so that they can give evidence very quickly after they arrive. They're not kept hanging around all day. And that the court building is designed and placed in a particular way that day to ensure that the witness can give their best answer. So, for example, if you're calling a witness with autism, you want to make sure that the people who are dealing with them don't have a lot of noisy jewellery on, or that the lighting isn't such that the light is going into their face, or there's not a lot of movement in the courtroom or audio disturbance. So we have a number of advocates' toolkits which you can access online, and I would suggest anyone who is questioning a vulnerable witnesses uses this resource. It's free. And so if you look on the advocates' toolkits, you will see a series of, that's what they are, toolkits, to enable you to properly question a particular witness. And they will explain to you what you need to do for that witness and what their particular requirements are. And they're really helpful tools. The other thing to do is to make sure you have a series of props. So a couple of stress balls, always useful. Some colouring pencils and some paper, and sometimes some props. So if you need to ask about time, you might want a timeline. If you need to ask about venues, you might want some photographs. It's all about preparing in advance to make sure that the witness is able to give their best evidence.
I think this principle of making courtrooms and the entire system more accessible and more comfortable for people is very important and should extend to people other than vulnerabilities as well, because common people are usually scared of these systems and the court buildings and everything. They feel they're in some kind of a trouble, or And I think this is a very important point that you've raised, that we need to make courts and these systems more accessible and more comfortable for people. So
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, go on.
Well, there are a series of videos and short pieces that the Her Majesty's court system over here have developed for child witness. It's very good. The children's charities do the same. Courts are far opposing that they used to be, and all judges have had training in making the process of any trial user-friendly. But again, this is no doubt something that will come to change in India in course. What I would say to you about that and everything else is be proactive, because it may be that the institutions may take a while to change, because these are complicated processes. But in the process of doing that, you can assist. Be active rather than passive in the process, and educate yourselves as a collegiate body about the things that could be done. And you can ask questions. Be more active, I think, is my key thing for anyone. If anyone says to me, "Oh, I don't like this process," my first thought is, well, what have you done about it? And if there are things that need changing, you can change them quietly, politely, but above all, change them with a collegiate body around you, making constructive suggestions to improve, because every system can improve. Every system.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful thought, ma'am. And moving on to our last questions, like from your experience over the course of years, what according to you are 3 important qualities or skills that set apart brilliant lawyers from average lawyers?
3.
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is preparation. The key to all expertise, advocacy is preparation. Attention to detail. Make sure you have the facts of your case in good an order as you possibly can. If you aren't prepared, nothing that follows will follow. Secondly, humility. This isn't about you. This isn't about whether you win or lose, how amazing your submissions were. This isn't about how incredible a lawyer you are. This is about the client, the person you represent, whether that's the state, a vulnerable person accused of crime, or a multinational company. It is that person who is important, not you. And the third thing is, when you have finished any piece of work, quietly reflect on what you could have done better. If you follow those 3 rules, you will be the very best advocate you can be.
Right. And ma'am, you are certainly an icon for all women around the world who want to join the bar and accelerate. In the current situation and the unfortunate incidents that have taken place in the recent times, the pandemic and whatever, the climate change, everything happening around the globe, women in law need some encouragement. So what is your word of advice to women who want to join the bar and accelerate?
If you want to join the bar, then you must do everything you can to achieve it. But you must understand that the law is a marathon, not a sprint. People may go more quickly than you at the start. You may not win hundreds of awards. You may be the person who feels less than. Don't. Each individual person has their own journey. All you need to do is to be the best you that you can be, the best lawyer that you can be. And if you are, and you are determined, stubborn, my advice to you is that if you want to join the bar, then you must do so. And you must not let anything stand in your way. Of course, there will be obstacles. There are obstacles in everything in life. Lawyers are people who see an obstacle and think to themselves, well, how can I get round that obstacle? Or see it as an opportunity. So, for example, the Contemporary Law Forum during COVID have been using the skills that they can use, using technology, to set out a load of podcasts. You've thought of something you can do, which gets you around the difficulty of not being able to have face-to-face meetings. Those are exactly the skills that lawyers need. For you to be a lawyer, you need to see a problem, because that's what it is, a problem, and find a solution. So if, as a woman, you want to be a member of the bar, then do your research, understand what's required, and work as hard as you can. Because the difference between those who succeed and those who fail is stubbornness. I didn't get where I am because I'm the most brilliant lawyer in the world. Of course I'm not. There may be many, many people who are much more brilliant than me, but there will be few who are so determined. And so if you are determined to succeed, you will succeed. It may not be the most obvious route. It may take you longer than other people. You may have obstacles in the way, but you can do it. Surround yourself, and this applies to either men or women, surround yourself with a good group of encouraging mentors, people who have got your back, and learn very early on that the success in this career comes from those who walk beside you. If you see someone trampling over somebody in order to progress, remember that they will trample over you in the self-same way. Learn early that it is only you that you can control. So be the best lawyer you can be. Be a kind and decent human being and walk beside your colleagues. If you do that, you will succeed.
Right. Just putting in my 2 cents on the issue, ma'am, let me just point this out that whatever people have seen, people who are best at their field and people who have actually gone on to the pinnacle of success, there's just one common binding factor amongst all these people, and that is the stubbornness to succeed. They're absolutely determined to succeed no matter what happens and no matter what life throws at them. So this is a very important point, that to have that stubbornness to succeed, it's essential to this practice. And thank you so much, ma'am, for this inspirational conversation. And your journey serves as a reminder, and I've mentioned it in the past and I'm mentioning it again, that it serves as a reminder that you can do whatever you want to do if you have the required perseverance and if you work hard enough. And thank you so much once again for joining